welcome to Infrastructure Matters, the podcast dedicated to exploring the dynamic world of infrastructure, asset management and public works. As always, I'm your host, David Jenkins, the Chief Executive of IPWEA. And today's episode, I am delighted that we have the Honorary Chris Bishop, New Zealand's Minister for Infrastructure and Transport. Minister Bishop shares his vision for the country's infrastructure future, tackling big reforms in asset management, housing and transport. And we had Minister Bishop at our International Public Works Conference, and he spoke brilliantly. We'll dive into New Zealand's National Infrastructure Plan, challenges in funding and consenting, and bold moves like distance-based ROSA user pricing. This is a candid look at how leadership, consensus, and global insights can help reshape a nation's infrastructure system. So grab a coffee and join us for an engaging conversation with one of the key voices shaping New Zealand's infrastructure future. So welcome to Infrastructure Matters podcast. My name's David Jenkins, and I'm delighted to have Minister Chris Bishop with me today. And the Minister's been speaking for us at our International Public Works Conference. So I'm going to start with an easy question for you, Minister.
Okay.
What's your vision for New Zealand's infrastructure over the next 10 to 20 years?
I want a high-quality infrastructure system that prioritises looking after what we've got and make sure that we build, new infrastructure that cost-effectively in a value-for-money way that ultimately lifts living standards and productivity for New Zealanders, because that's what it's all about.
And if you were to sort of give yourself a rating out of 10 at the moment, and then where you're looking to go to, where are you and what are you going to get out of 10? 10 being the best.
For myself or for the system?
For the system.
The system. I'd give us a 4. I think we've got a long way to go. We're bad at asset management. We're bad at asset... we're bad at the way the Crown is bad. The New Zealand government's bad at the way we manage our capital. There's huge system frustration. We've got a pretty good pipeline. People sort of say often, there's no national pipeline in New Zealand. It's sort of not true. We just released some figures today, actually, that indicates there's $230 billion worth of infrastructure in the pipeline, $125 billion of it, which has a funding source attached. So there's plenty of projects, and there's data-rich information out there for people who choose to look at it. So I sort of think we're okay on the pipeline, and there's plenty of stuff being built that people want to build, but the system is problematic.
And I heard you speak a couple of years, and actually had you at this Building Nations conference as well. In terms of you've listed a number of priorities, asset management being one of them, and you discussed that, but what is if you were to sort of summarise your top 3 priorities when it comes to infrastructure in New Zealand, what would they be and why?
Top 3 would be delivering the National Infrastructure Plan, which we've got work underway at the moment through the Infrastructure Commission, and trying to get some political consensus around the key elements of the plan. Number 2 would be sorting out the consenting framework. That is really important. If you talk to people in the infrastructure sector in New Zealand, they'd say to you, planning and resource consenting and all the things attached to that, drive up project costs, make it really hard to build that long-term pipeline. So I'd probably put consenting, and then number 3 would be asset management and getting a better system around that.
Okay, I want to go into the asset management piece if I can, but firstly, just in the National Infrastructure Plan, maybe just for the listeners, you could just outline what exactly the National Infrastructure Plan is, how it's all going to work, and,
sure.
And specifically how you see local government's role as that sort of
develops. Sure. So we campaigned in opposition and then coming into government on developing a 30-year national plan to look out over the next 30 years and look at what we need and what we should be building and what we're not building, look at the system improvements we need to do to improve things. So when we came into government, we said to the Infrastructure Commission, which is an independent Crown entity, that's your job, get on with it. So they've done that. They've just published the draft, which takes a look at what we're building now and looks at what we might need in the future. And they talk about forward guidance, and there's some numbers for each of the sectors there based on demographic change that's coming down the pipe. But the major focus of the plan is around system reform. So, greater focus on asset management, greater use of pricing, greater use of user pays, for example. So there's a whole range of different things there that are really important. And so the draft is out for consultation now. In fact, I think consultation's about to close, or it has closed. There'll be a final report given to me by the end of the year. I think they're targeting December 20 from memory, so right up before Christmas. Good for some fun summer reading for me. And then the government is statutorily required to respond to the plan in the new year. I think we've got till April. And I'm really keen to try and build some consensus around what the response is from the government to that.
Yeah.
With other political parties in Parliament. So let's wait and see where that gets to.
And the Buildings Nations conference a couple of weeks ago, a month ago,
yeah.
you're on stage with your opposition leader and opposition. Your
it's
opposition.
Not the leader.
No
yet.
leader. No,
it's not the leader yet.
No, it's not. No. Your opposition, and you talked about consensus and trying to drive consensus. Is that a reality? You both have, come from different spectrums. You got different visions and reality of how it's going to work. How are you actually physically going to get consensus around some of these things?
Well, I think it is up to a point. As I sort of said publicly a few times now, if you can get 80 to 90% agreement on the major things, that's good. If you take housing, for example, I mean, there's a bit of stuff rats and mice around the edges, around social housing. Labor think we're not doing enough and, all that sort of stuff. But actually the broad thrust of housing reforms that we're doing are actually a continuation of where the previous government, left off. There is actually much more, I think, consensus-driven stuff than people probably appreciate. Housing is a good example of that. On infrastructure, I think we can get to sort of 80 to 90% agreement on the major things. I mean, if you take congestion charging, for example, or time of use pricing, that bill's before select committee right now, but under the previous government, there was a select committee inquiry which met with unanimous cross-party support for the concept of congestion pricing. We've produced a piece of legislation on the back of that, which is now going through the process. Very hopeful we'll get consensus to introduce that. So it's very important from a productivity point of view. Labor have a differing view to us on PPPs. It's not actually 100% clear what their view is, to be honest, but
yep.
At various different points they've said they're not in favour of private capital for schools and hospitals, for example. Now, there's private capital involved in both those things now, but anyway, leaving that aside, they're sort of not comfortable with that. Likewise for corrections. So it's a sort of ideological thing. So that's fine. Like, they're entitled to that view. People can have a debate about it. As I sort of said on stage, and I've said a few times now, the Greens are always going to be more in favour of cycleways than roads. People kind of know that. That's fine. But it's all around the edges, let's face it. I mean, cycleways make sense in some places, not all the time. We wouldn't do as many of them as the Greens would, but that's fine. Yeah. You can have a debate about the edges. So I reckon, healthy debates. One thing I always say to people around the bipartisan stuff is, if you all agreed, some people would say that's good, but actually, in a robust, healthy democracy, disagreement's fine.
Yeah.
There are differing views about what we should be doing. That's totally fine. That's part of what makes living in a democracy a good thing. So it's about how you navigate your way through all that stuff, and I think we do a pretty good job on planning reform. We're working quite hard with the opposition to try and get some consensus around replacement for the Resource Management Act, for example.
And you've been quite proactive in terms of trying to drive consensus around these issues.
I mean, without blowing my own trumpet, we've done way more than any previous government had. I mean, like under the last Labor government, as I sort of said publicly, they had this replacement for the Resource Management Act. They met with us 2 days before it got introduced, dumped it on the table and said, here's a new bill, what do you think? It's like, well, thanks for that, but we can't read 1,000 pages in 2 days, and you haven't involved us up to this point, so it's sort of actually irrelevant what we think, because you're not going to change it, because you've decided what it all is. Yeah. So, like, it doesn't really matter what our view is. And then you can sort of say publicly, we briefed the opposition. We didn't really brief us 45 minutes, 2 days before it gets introduced at 9 p.m. at night, and that's not briefing. That's not real engagement. So that's the only meeting I had in opposition with Labor about anything. Whereas, I'm trying to take a different approach. So, I mean, I'm not trying to be pejorative about what's gone before. I'm just sort of making the point that we are genuinely trying to, build a bit of consensus is a funny phrase, but we're trying to build a bit of cooperation.
Yeah. Okay, understand. All right, let's take up the asset management piece. And look, and I said this on stage, and talking to an audience that local government engineers, which would applaud you for the fact that in your priorities, you've talked about the importance of looking after.
Yeah, well, they know way more about it than I do. I'm quite conscious of that. There's all these like boffins asking questions. I'm like, you know heaps more than I do, my friend.
But in terms of and you talked about different phases of asset management maturity. But one area I'm keen to ask you a question, and I did this on stage. the importance of people and driving capacity and capability.
Yes.
Right? We have a shortage of good people in asset management, local government anyway, right? So, but if you want to raise maturity, I've always argued that, people got to be front and center. Has the government given it any thought to how that's going to work on top of the frameworks and the systems and changes of?
I mean, the honest answer is not really.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a work in progress. So we've just kind of kick-started our asset management piece, and it's going to be a multi-year program of work, obviously. And I'm very open to suggestions from industry as to how we do that. One thing that has been pointed out to me is that I think it used to be called the Infrastructure Commission in the UK, but I think they've now changed their name and they've merged the couple of bodies together, but probably still exists, where there's a kind of leadership academy over there where I understand that they sort of train people up in some of these things. And the central government funds that a bit with, I think, maybe with industry as well. So apparently that model's worked quite well. I don't know a huge amount about it, so I probably should stop speaking about it. But apparently that's worked quite well. So I'm sort of open to anything within reason. We've got to build greater institutional capacity from a people point of view inside central government, but also the local government too. But the real problem, to be honest, is at central government level. As all of the sort of surveys and metrics that I look at tell me, is that regulated entities in local government aren't perfect, but they do a better job than central government. Yeah. So,
You mentioned the UK, but is there other sort of areas of the world? I mean, you're over here today, of this week. Are there others of the world that you go, right, we need to bring back some of what they're doing overseas. That's a good idea. And on the flip side, what is it that New Zealand can potentially teach? And I mean, in terms of climate change and asset management resilience, I think you've done some good stuff. But what is it that you can learn from others? And
we've got a long way to go on that stuff. I mean, one of the things we're doing on climate change is I think we're going to end up with like a national flood mapping tool, national risk registers and all sorts of things. So I'm not in charge of that. Well, I sort of am from a RMA point of view, but it's being led by Simon Watts as climate change minister. So, look, there's heaps we can learn from the rest of the world. I've spent a bit of time travelling overseas to do that. So just in New York last month. So looking at congestion pricing, it's been wildly successful over there. I mean, really controversial. Probably will be in New Zealand too when we do it. But congestion's down, safety has improved. Even just simple things like horn honks are massively down because the congestion's down, which means people are getting out and about, biking, walking, and stuff like that. Like livability's improved. So we had a meeting with them about how to implement that. That was really good. It was in Texas as well, and they've really got housing right. I mean, Texas, or in Houston in particular, I mean, the place is just going gangbusters. And people think Texas, they go, oh yeah, Houston, oh yeah, oil. Well, that's partly true, but actually it's a clean energy powerhouse. Wind, solar, other forms. They've got a massive medical industry there, and it's powered by cheap housing. Because the average house to income ratio in Houston's 3.84 to 1. Actually ticked up a bit in the last few years, so they've got a few issues, but affordable housing in Texas. I've been to the UK. I've looked at the way in which they've used funding and financing tools for things like Battersea Power Station, the Elizabeth Line, for example. There's always things we can pick up offshore, which I'm really conscious of. In terms of where we're going, we are trying to lead the world on road user charge reform. So if we get this, what we're going to do right, we will be either the first or second country in the world, depending on how you measure it, to move to distance-based road user pricing and abolishing petrol tax. It's a big step.
Yeah, you announced that at Buildings Nations. We should talk about that. And what's the feedback that you've had? Oh,
pretty positive. Some people worried about privacy, which is fair enough. I get that. Some people worried about like tracking. Tracking individuals. It's not about tracking where people go. It's just about measuring how far they go. And I mean, I do find that a bit interesting because, like, people carry around these cell phones in their pockets. I mean, like, what do they think they're doing all day? I mean, the amount of data that's handed over, not to the government, by the way, to private companies. Well, what do they think? Where do they think that's going? But people get worked up about the government. It's like, we're not going to do that. So there's privacy concerns to work through, but the idea that you base pricing for roads based on how much they're used is a pretty simple one. And, we've found ourselves in the situation where some people are paying through the nose to use the roads because they're paying through the nose in petrol tax. They've got fuel inefficient cars. And other people who drive like, EVs and hybrids are paying very little. It's not fair. It's actually regressive, to be honest. So we're gonna change that.
And it's got to change. And the reality is
it
it's
has
got
to change. Well,
Yeah.
this is the thing.
And it's not just New Zealand.
Well, this is the thing is I say to people are like, oh, I don't really like about that. It's like, well, what would you do? And they eventually end up being like, I'll probably end up doing something like what you're doing. It's like, well, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like if you don't make such changes, the system won't be able to afford to fund the maintenance and the ongoing costs of the road. So I think we're a world leader there. I mean, part of the reason I'm here in Sydney today is to talk with Chris Minns and a bunch of people in Sydney about the housing reforms we're doing, where we are, arguably world leading and have been for a few years now, but it's a multi-generational problem. So we're not going to get on top of it straight away, but we are making progress. So I think we're doing some good things in New Zealand, but there's always more to learn from the rest of the world, including in Australia. I mean, New South Wales is great state. Yeah. Great city.
Yeah, it is. I'm a bit jealous, but yes, it is. Envious. But let me ask you this question. In terms of housing reform and where you see that going, I mean, typically Auckland, a very expensive city to live. So Sydney, etc., Melbourne, eastern states. How do you, what's the long-term plan in terms of getting housing costs down, affordability, etc.? Where do you see that happening? And you've got a big reform agenda.
Yeah, huge. So we call it going for housing growth. It's got 3 elements to it. One is freeing up land supply restrictions at the edge of our city and inside our cities. 2 is sorting out the infrastructure funding constraints that stop houses from being built. And then the 3rd is trying to change the political economy around housing so that communities support growth rather than hostile to growth. And then overlaid on all of that is planning reform, where we're building a much more enabling planning system more generally, including around housing. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of detail to that, but that's what we're doing at a high level. And we made good progress so far. There's a long way to go. And it builds on what's gone before. So it builds on some of the measures put in place by the previous Labor government, and we're kind of building on top of that. So in the end, the ultimate aim is to drive down the price of land, drive down the cost of housing, drive down rents, and make housing more affordable. And that will lead to enormous economic gains for New Zealand. Yeah. But it's a medium to long term thing. House prices in New Zealand are too high. They've been flat for a couple of years. I'd like to see house prices continue to decline. And incomes to rise.
Yeah, okay. Just going back to the asset management piece, and you talked about this, you've got a national underground asset register in Wellington, and there was a whole lot of media around water pipes and issues around flooding, etc. And there's a plan to roll that out nationally. Well,
there might be a plan. We're just having a look at it. This is the problem it's trying to solve, right? Is this issue where the telcos come along and dig up a road and find that the things they laid down are not where they thought they were, and then the water company does the same, and their data's all out of date, and there's no kind of single source of truth that everyone can access to go, rightio, now we know where everything is, so we avoid kind of strikes on stuff that we don't own.
Yep.
And then also we can coordinate better when we're doing digging of stuff under the ground. Because like the number of people who say to me, like, we had Chorus here last week and then we had Water Care or whatever, and they just dug up the same section of road last month. Okay. So it's like vast public expense wasted, right? So that's not a universal story, but there's quite a bit of that stuff going on. So we're just having a look at whether or not we would roll that out nationwide, and then the question is like, who pays and how, and who is the owner of the data, and who is going to drive it, because it's not actually clear from central government who should be responsible for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, we just have it's an important priority, but it's second order, to be honest. We're having a look at it.
But from an asset management point of view, to actually understand what you've got to, that's part of the whole explanation, to explain to elected leaders, well, you've got a whole lot of underground infrastructure, so the new shiny...
but people don't care. That's the problem. It's like, I got told the other day that Wellington Water, which was actually the council, because Wellington Water it's not actually an asset owning entity. Well, it will be, but it's not at the moment. So that Wellington Water discovered that they'd built a pipe from like one part of Wellington down to the harbour back in 2003 at like $40 million. Never connected it to the rest of the network.
Right.
Just sat there for 20 years. Didn't even know it was there.
Right.
It wasn't on their plans. Well, they eventually found the plan, because they were digging it up for something else. I was like, oh, there's a pipe here. I wonder what the hell that's about. And someone went back and looked through the records. Oh, yeah, we put that in like 20 years ago and never really connected it. It's just been sitting there. And there'd be so many stories like that around the country.
Yeah, right.
They just don't get told because it's embarrassing. But it's true. It's hopeless. It's really bad.
Okay.
You know, and water infrastructure is a shocker.
Yeah.
From an asset management point of view, it's hopeless because we haven't got the system settings right. This is my point. So, you know, councils have owned water assets. They haven't ring-fenced revenue. Well, they haven't charged for water. I mean, there's a number of issues. They haven't charged for water properly. Mm-hmm. So people just pay through rates. So we haven't actually brought the costs, you know, revenue and costs closer together. There's no ring-fencing. When council laws have to make a decision between, do I invest in maintenance on the pipes or a new one or building a convention centre? Guess what they choose?
Yeah, convention centre.
Yeah, exactly. The loss-making convention centre that they also now can't account for the running costs off. So, you know, system's a problem.
Yeah.
There's ways through that. We are fixing that.
But it also comes down to, leadership, and you did mention that up on your speech in terms of leadership around driving some of this understanding around asset management. What do you do? You know, you've got a responsibility here to look after all assets and maintain them properly, and that needs to come right from the top. It can't come from bottom up. Yeah, well,
I'm trying to drive that, but I can only do it. I'm only one person, right? I'm really trying to lead the charge on it, but I need help. Frankly, and I need better examples of best practice, and we need better state capacity. We need better expertise and professionalism. You know, we need people to take it more seriously. Ministers likewise. So we've got a long way to go, and there's a lot of work to do. But I'm only one person. I can only do what I can do.
Yeah. Well, I applaud you for what you are doing. So just look. What is your legacy? What is the legacy that you want to leave as Minister of Infrastructure? And your legacy.
I've still got 12 months to go.
And also it's all coming up for re-election, and I'm confident you'll get in for the next 3 years. So let's look back in the legacy after 6-7 years.
It's always tight. Well, no, I don't want to throw ahead to 6-7 years because we'll fight the next election on it. I mean, I'm genuinely trying to do the right thing in terms of infrastructure policy. So, you know, one of the things that struck me when I started going to Building Nations, you know, sort of 2021, 2022, was it's just so obvious that there's a whole bunch of things that the sector and the kind of broad policy, you know, policy-making community thinks that we need to do. And so I've just tried to do them. And now, but not all of them are implemented yet. And we've got work underway and all those kind of cliches. But I think, you know, in 5 to 6 years' time, I said I wouldn't talk about 6 years, but let's just do it. Let's just hear me out. Yeah. I think the future is quite bright. So we'll have time of use pricing in Auckland. It'll be bumpy, but it will work and it will be productivity enhancing. We'll have a national plan for infrastructure, which is driving stable system reforms. We'll have more user pays in infrastructure. We'll have more toll roads, for example. We'll have a big pipeline of infrastructure that is a stable pipeline. We'll have a more enabling consenting environment in which people don't have to spend 7 years fighting for resource consent to build a wind farm, for example. We will have an environment for housing in which apartments and terraced houses and you know, big developments near train stations are just, you know, de rigueur, just, you know, not par for the course. We will have, you know, a private capital flowing where it makes sense into infrastructure projects and bringing the discipline that private capital can bring around that. We'll have PPPs where they make sense. You know, we'll have potentially long-term maintenance contracts for some of our schools, for example. So I think, you know, there's heaps of stuff underway. Sometimes it's almost like, oh boy, like it's almost too much stuff, you know.
But there's complete
clarity.
I
don't really sleep, David.
but there's complete clarity on success. You've just identified exactly what success looks like.
Yeah, at a high level. I mean, there's a lot of detail to go.
Of course.
Heaps of reforms and everything. So it's just, look, I just wake up and it's like, rightio, what's next? You know, let's move on, let's keep going. Because there's just so much stuff to do.
And I guess this leads me to my final question, if I may. You have a substantial portfolio, and when I addressed you, I didn't realise you were the Minister of Transport as well.
Yeah, I got that 6 months ago.
That was my faux pas. So
no, it's totally fine. Simeon got promoted to health, and I got well. The PM says I got demoted because I got sport taken off me.
Okay.
But he left me with associate sport.
Right.
So,
Okay.
I've got one, I've got another thing. It's good.
But a lot of responsibility, substantial reform going on. You've got an election coming up.
Yeah.
How do you relax? How do you actually stay on top of it? And you got a family at home. It's very busy. How do you switch off, or don't you?
Well, it's a good question. I don't really. I mean, I went out. I was at Bevana on Saturday night for which is this, like beer festival thing. And I realised it was the first time I'd seen my mates for one of them 6 months. Most of them about maybe 3. So that's quite hard. I mean, normally, we've got 2 young kids at home. So Jeremy's just turned 3, Matilda's 9 months. So any spare time is just normally at home or just doing stuff with the kids like gymnastics and swimming and music and you know what it's like. Just
I do have 2 3.5-year-old twins. I know exactly what it's like.
Saturdays and Sundays are busy, right?
Yeah.
So when Jenna and I get an evening off, we like to go out to dinner, just the 2 of us, or maybe with another couple. But we don't. I mean, I don't get a huge amount of time. But that's fine. It's not forever, right? And it's not forever. Nothing. No job in politics lasts forever, and I could lose my job tomorrow. You just never know. So I just try and make every day count.
Yeah.
Because you just never know where it's all going to go, but only 3-year terms in New Zealand, so it's like, I just don't want to wake up at the end of 3 years and go, what did I accomplish? What did I actually do? Because I reckon, respectfully, I reckon quite a few ministers probably get to the end of the 3 or maybe even 6 and go, well, that was fun, but what did I actually accomplish? And you don't want to look back and do that because it's like the job's hard enough on family and travel and all the rest of it. The job's hard enough without looking back and not being able to say you've actually done something. I want to be able to do that.
In an ideal world, how long would you want to stay in politics? Have you given that thought?
Oh, I never answer that question properly. I do the politician dodge. It's always it's genuinely true. It's always just every 3 years thing. I'll just make up my mind what I'm doing. Next I'm going to run again. Obviously, I've been appointed the campaign manager for National for 2026.
On top of everything else.
Yeah. Well, that's more of a next year thing. But yes, you're right. It's another job. So yeah, I'm going to run again next year, and then after that, we'll wait and see. It's an every 3 year thing. So I became an MP in 2014. I was 31.
Yeah. I
was one of the youngest MPs.
Yeah.
Not the youngest, but I was 4th or 5th, I think.
Well, you used to be on that young show, the young member show. I think you were Jacinda? You two used to spar and...
No, that was Simon Bridges.
Simon Bridges, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, no, but so that was Simon Bridges. So I was quite young, youngish. Now I'm 42, got married, had kids in the meantime and all the rest of it. So I don't know. I mean, the average length of time as an MP for people is actually surprisingly short. I think on average it's 7 years. And to be honest, it should be longer. I don't think this turnover of MPs is a very good thing.
No.
The 50% of MPs elected in the 2023 election are new. So half the parliament's new.
Yeah, corporate.
Well, but you've got to build up expertise. You can build up knowledge. I mean, I'm better at being an MP now than I was when I got elected. Of course.
Yeah.
It's like anyone who stays in a job.
Yeah.
You get better. You learn more.
Yeah.
You develop your skills, your knowledge. You're better at speaking. You're better at policy. You learn different areas. And when I first became an MP, I spent quite a bit of time deliberately trying to get out of my comfort zone. So I joined, cabinet caucus committees and things that I didn't really know a lot about to try and build up my knowledge base a bit. And that is one of the good things about starting at the bottom. Every MP starts at the bottom. Like John Key started as a backbencher, and Christopher Luxon started as he famously says, he started in the living in Harry Potter's broom cupboard. He had the smallest office in the Parliament.
Did he?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he was opposite me.
Right.
Yeah. No, I had a sort of medium-sized opposition office. These are the things you fight about when you're in opposition. Yeah. Because nothing else. Well, there's nothing else to do. There are things to do, but people get fixated on minor matters. So office size and where you are relative to your mates around the building, it becomes a level of fixation that it shouldn't. But anyway, but Christopher was new backbencher, got given the smallest office. But good on him, he didn't complain. He just spent all his time in my office.
But half the challenge is, you've got the reform agenda, you've got the ideas, you know what you want to drive through, you've got to do all that stuff, but actually understanding how you work it through a political system, right? And how you get it through government and all the bills. And so half of that's the, learning all that stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. And I'm a better minister now. People don't appreciate that. No, they don't. And they don't, the whole way cabinet works and driving a policy agenda and shepherding the department, and I've got 8 agencies that work for me. It's hard, and I'm better now than I was when I first got elected. I'm a better minister now than I was 18 months ago. I would say every minister would say that. And governments get better as they go. And the bureaucracy gets more, the change is hard for bureaucracies because they get used to a certain way of working or ideology is the wrong phrase, but just a mode, a mentality. And so that came, there's a cost of change, I suppose would be my point. So anyway, but that's all just part of it. And the public, at the end of the day, the public don't care about that. No. The public want us to deliver. And I feel that really keenly and really strongly. They just want us to do things. And they don't really care about the fact that it's hard because the bureaucratic infighting and wrangling is hard and cabinet committees and the fact it's a three-way coalition, they don't really care about that either. They sort of vaguely appreciate it, but they don't really care. They just want stuff done while they elected this government. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, okay. Minister, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your listeners. Appreciate it.
Thank you ever so much. And for spending time with us, taking questions, your candor, and spending time with me today.
Enjoyed it. Thank you. I'll come back next year.
You're very welcome.
Very good. Where is he meeting next year?
Next year it will be, Perth.
Perth.
WA. Beautiful.
Gee, that's a long way to go.
Yeah, but it's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
So...
Okay. Well,
can we pencil
no promises for Perth. It's a long way, but anyway, we'll see. I'm 70% there.
Okay. Well, we've got our International Asset Management Conference in Melbourne next year.
Okay. That might be more realistic. Okay.
All right. We'll pencil.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And that wraps up another episode of Infrastructure Matters. A big thank you to Minister Bishop for joining us and for sharing his vision for New Zealand's infrastructure system, from housing reforms to asset management and future-focused transport solutions. To our listeners, as always, thank you for tuning in. We hope this episode sparked new ideas and gave you a deeper understanding of how leadership and reform can drive better outcomes in infrastructure. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review Infrastructure Matters on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn for the latest episodes and exclusive content. I'm David Jenkins signing off, reminding you that in the realm of infrastructure, every detail matters.